This episode of Distraction is sponsored by Omega Bright CBD, formulated by Omega Bright Wellness, creators of the #1 omega-3 supplements for the past 20 years. Omega Bright CBD, safe, third-party tested, and it works. Shop online at omegabrightwellness.com. And by Landmark College, offering comprehensive support for students with ADHD and other learning differences. Learn more at lcdistraction.org. Landmark College, the college of choice for students who learn differently. Hello and welcome to Distraction. I'm your host, Dr. Ned Hallowell, and thank you so much for joining me. This week, I'm going to do what I love to do, which is answer your questions. We try to answer as many as we can on the show, so please keep on sending your questions to connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. Please send them along. We will answer them. Okay, just to prove that, let's get to the first question. I am a 26-year-old woman with ADHD. I'm in a committed relationship, and at times I feel very insecure. I thought that a lot of it stems from abandonment issues rooted in childhood. But now I'm wondering if it is more about a sensitivity to rejection. My question is, for those of us with ADHD, what is the difference between abandonment issues and our rejection sensitivity? Could they be connected? And how can we better handle the intense, painful emotions that seem to take over when hit with either or both? Wonderful question. And she ends, thanks so much, fellow ADHDer MB. Well, thank you, MB. The difference between abandonment issues and rejection sensitivity, one is caused by life's experience, abandonment trauma in childhood, and you got hurt into it. Life can hurt people into having abandonment issues, and so it comes from being burned. And you've been burned too often, you develop abandonment issues. Now, to take it one step further, why doesn't everyone who experiences abandonment develop abandonment issues? And that's where the substrate comes into play. That's where the DNA comes into play. That's where what turns out to be rejection sensitivity comes into play. It just so happens that some people are much more susceptible, much more sensitive to the toxicity of being abandoned. Some people just rolls off their back. I don't care. Goodbye. Other people, it's horrible, and it burns a hole in their brain. And that has to do with genetics. That has to do with what protoplasm you're born with. And it is part of the ADHD syndrome. And Dr. Dodson has made this a well-known phenomenon, that we develop what's called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. We are exquisitely sensitive to perceived rejection. It doesn't even have to be an actual rejection. You can imagine someone walking past you and not saying hello, that they're rejecting you. And in fact, they were just thinking about the tax bill they just received in the mail, and the last thing they were thinking about was you. But we perceive it as rejection. We perceive a slight where none exists. Or maybe it was an actual slight, in which case, well, so what? So what if that person walks by you and doesn't particularly like you? So what? There's people in this world you're going to like and dislike, and the only power they have over you is the power you give them. And so you need to take that power back. Now, easier said than done. And if you have the genetic predisposition to rejection sensitivity, and if you happen to have suffered abandonment, then it's a double whammy, and the two work together to put you in a constantly vulnerable state. Now, it really doesn't matter how much is doing what, whether it's issues of abandonment or whether it's the DNA-caused rejection sensitivity dysphoria. The sum and substance of it is the same, that you are always vulnerable to perceived rejection, to perceived abandonment, that you are walking around in a state of heightened vulnerability, heightened sensitivity. A couple of comments on that. First of all, heightened vulnerability and heightened sensitivity they're not altogether a bad thing. They're like most things in the world of ADHD. There's two sides to it. It's like the flip side of distractibility is curiosity. The flip side of impulsivity is creativity. Well, the flip side of sensitivity and rejection sensitivity and sensitivity to abandonment is sensitivity. If you're sensitive, that means you pick up on things. That means you see deeply, you feel deeply, you live deeply. There is a wonderful side to it that you go deeper than most people do. You perceive nuance that most people miss. You perceive shades of gray. You don't live in the black and white world. You're smarter than that. You're deeper than that. You're more in tune with life than that. And you pay a price for it. It's like the price you pay for having an imagination. The price you pay for this sensitivity is you can be hurt. You can be hurt when there's no cause of being hurt. You can be hurt by bad weather. You can wake up and feel everybody's against you because the weather is bad. So you can perceive rejection when obviously there's no rejection. Nature is not creating bad weather to punish you, but you can feel it that way. And even though quote unquote, that's irrational, nonetheless, you can feel rejected by the world because it's a rainy day. The antidote, as you know, I always come back to the same antidote almost all the time. The antidote is in connection. The antidote is not sucking it up, although you have to do that, but the antidote is never worry alone. The antidote is to talk to someone you love and trust. And next thing you know, you'll be rebuilding your armor. You'll be feeling less vulnerable. You'll be feeling more in control. You'll put it in perspective. You'll put it into perspective, and that's so key in life. The things that we get all upset about, we almost always get all upset about them because we lose perspective. And it's hard to regain perspective once you've lost it, once you're in a downward spiral. The best way to do it is to help someone else fish you out of the downward spiral. So reach out your hand, talk to somebody, and within a matter of seconds, you'll be feeling better. The moment of connection helps you feel better. Rejection sensitivity, abandonment issues, very real, but they happen in the imagination. They happen, within your mind. It's your perception that you want to work on, not the external reality. And the good news is we can modify the feelings that are caused by perceived rejection or abandonment through connection to people or a dog. In fact, today I wrote a prescription for a dog. I gave it to the patient and she cracked up. She said, I'm going to have this framed. I wrote on the prescription, one dog right now. And I really meant it. She needs to get a dog. She wants one. And it's not like I'm forcing it on her. But I just know that dog will work wonders for her. And she had a lot of these very same issues. The good news is we are able to manage our minds in ways that we couldn't in the era of suck it up and tough it out and stiff upper lip. And now that we're able to talk about this and realize the brain is malleable and plastic, to use the word from the neuroscience, then we can find out how you can have your cake and eat it too, how you can be sensitive and not suffer too much for it, how you can have this sensitivity but cash in on the upside without being drained and defeated by the downside. Wonderful question, MB, whatever MB stands for. I think more beautiful or more better or mostly best. I won't go off on that anymore. Well, one of our listeners named Lana, like Lana Turner, that dates me, doesn't it? She wrote, quote, I enjoy your podcast very much and thank you for all the information that you provide. Well, thank you for thanking us. She didn't write that. That was my comment. Going on. I am curious to learn more about low frustration tolerance in adults and children with ADHD. I have this issue, and so do my children. I would like to be able to help us all better cope when dealing with frustration. Thank you. Well, it is true. Most of us with ADHD have a low tolerance of frustration. We overreact when things don't go our way, when we make a mistake. Common sight is a kid doing his homework, he makes a mistake, the next thing you know, he erupts, he breaks his pencil, he pounds the table, he slams his fist against his head, and he says, I'm so stupid, I'm so bad, and just loses it. and often attacking himself. We can just go from 0 to 60 at the minute we make a mistake, the minute we don't get what we're hoping for, the minute, we get a 99 instead of 100 on the test, we can lose it. And it's my analogy of the race car brain with the bicycle brakes. Well, the brakes completely fail us. And we go from 0 to 60, instead of being able to tap the brakes and say, wait a minute, making this mistake is sort of part of learning. I don't need to break my pencil and tear up my homework and make a big scene. But we don't have time to put on those brakes. Our brain has lurched into crisis mode before our thinking, inhibiting brain has time to intervene and put on the brakes. It's built into the condition. It doesn't mean you're an entitled, spoiled brat, but you can behave as if you were one because life is not going your way. Learning how to tolerate frustration, learning how to tolerate not getting what you want, not being perfect, not doing everything just the way it should be done, is really a major life skill, particularly for those of us with this wonderful condition so wrongly named ADHD. How should you deal with it? Well, first of all, follow my first rule, never worry alone. Sit down and talk about it. Say, okay, kids, mom and you, we all have this same issue. If things don't go our way, we lose it. If we make a mistake, we lose it. If someone else doesn't deliver for us, we lose it. If the test doesn't come out the way we want it to, we lose it. If mom makes a mistake cooking, she wants to burn down the kitchen. I mean, on and on and on. The more you can kind of name it, laugh about it, hold it up for everyone to see, share the problem. And then you can, again, look at the flip side of it, which is you passionately want things to go right. The flip side of low tolerance of frustration is an intense desire for things to go right. So that's good. So like everything else in this domain, there's a positive side to every negative side. So point that out. And then you begin to say, okay, what are the strategies to strengthen our brakes? And it comes right back to the fundamental issue in the world of ADD to make the world go your way as opposed to not. Strengthen those brakes. How do you do that? Well, it starts with education and insight. So sit down and say, we have this problem. You name it. You agree on it. Instead of being at its mercy, where you have no name for it, and it's just a thundercloud comes in and you break out in thunder and lightning. You name it, particularly with your kids, and you'll say, okay, we've got this issue. So when one of us does lose it, don't attack, don't punish, don't say, you bad boy or you bad mommy. You say, you're losing it, strengthen your brakes. Say your brakes are failing you. That's a lot easier to hear and sort of catch yourself. When mom, the recipe doesn't work and you're slamming down pots and pans, say, wait a minute, my brakes are failing me. Or for one of your children, give them permission to say, Mommy, your brakes are failing you. Get a grip on those brakes. And so then you begin to make it conscious and deliberate, and you have a way of intervening that is not shaming or humiliating. And intervening with yourself, you can just say, it's my braking problem, not my character problem. A lot easier to work on a braking problem than a character problem. Physical exercise is, as always, really good to help people develop more of a tolerance for frustration. So if you can get exercise regularly, that will help a lot. Learning how to use words. Put the frustration into words rather than attack mode. So you can just say, doing your homework, this is so frustrating. Or cooking, this is so frustrating. Making a souffle is frustrating. You can just say it out loud. And putting it into words helps you not have to put it into actions, throwing things, cursing things, and so on. So even cursing is better than throwing things. So using words, exercise, using language, teaming up to help each other out, using the analogy of the brake. And then give yourself time. It's like developing a muscle, developing the muscle of tolerating frustration. Believe me, I'm 69 years old. I'm still working on it. So it's not something you're going to snap your fingers and have done. I get on the phone with the whatever company it is I'm calling, and I get these canned responses, and I want to go nuts. And I try to talk myself down. I don't always succeed, but I try. It's a common problem in the world of ADHD. Remember, the flip side of it is that you care passionately about making things go right, that you're trying your best, and when your best efforts fail, it's frustrating. But then put it in the context of braking power, not bad character. because bad character just adds shame and guilt and humiliation to it, which only makes it worse. Thank you, Lana, for that wonderful question. All right, we're going to pause right here for just a moment. If you've listened to Distraction before, then you've heard me talk about our sponsor, Landmark College in beautiful Putney, Vermont. Well, the best way to learn about any college is to see it for yourself. Landmark College is holding 2 winter open houses, one on Friday, December 6th, and the other on Friday, January 10th. So that's both Fridays, December 6th and January 10th. You can tour their beautiful Vermont campus. You can eat lunch in the dining hall. You can meet with faculty, staff, and students. You can learn about admissions, financial aid, and other key elements of their academic and student life programs. You can even meet with an admissions counselor and apply for admission on site. Go to lcdistraction.org to learn more and to register. That's lcdistraction.org to learn more and to register for the 2 winter open houses on Friday, December 6th and Friday, January 10th at the wonderful Landmark College in beautiful Putney, Vermont. It truly is the best college of its kind for those of us who learn differently. Okay, we have time to do one more. Gabriella, I love that name. Gabriella writes, quote, "My 8-year-old has just been diagnosed with ADD, and here I am learning all I can about it before we start treatment. He's so far been seeing a therapist. What is your opinion on neurofeedback, biofeedback treatment for kids with ADD? I've asked that question both my son's psychologist and psychiatrist, and both have discouraged me to pursue it. Quote, you are free to try, but there is no scientific proof that it works, unquote. But I'm not convinced after my own research." Well, both your psychologist and your psychiatrist gave you the standard response, and it is true. In the literature, we do not have sustained studies that suggest that neurofeedback and biofeedback are worth the time and money that they require. Which is not an insignificant amount of time and money. On the other hand, have I known people who have benefited from it? Yes, I have. Not a lot. It's not something that I refer people to routinely. But if someone wants to do it and they found a practitioner who does do it, who's been getting good results, and they can afford it, and they have tried the more standard interventions, then go for it. My motto is whatever works as long as it's safe and it's legal. Whatever works as long as it's safe and it's legal. Now, neurofeedback, biofeedback is very practitioner dependent and system dependent. So it depends on what version of neurofeedback, biofeedback are you using and in whose hands. Some of these clinics are just factories. They want to just churn you in and out, take your money, and that's the end of it. That's not the kind of place you want to go to. You want to see somebody who really understands it, has developed a method, and he can tell you about successful cases and how they worked, and sit down and talk it through with him. And yes, there are some systems that have proven to work well in selected cases. There's no doubt about it. However, having said that, I would first try the proven interventions before I went to neurofeedback, biofeedback. And a lot of times people go for them because they're wanting to avoid medication. Well, without getting into whether or not you should avoid medication, the better non-medication interventions are physical exercise, meditation, education, coaching, and cerebellar stimulation. Any exercise that challenges balance and coordination is very good for ADHD. So before you go to the more expensive, time-consuming neurofeedback, biofeedback, get yourself on a program, first of all, where you understand the condition. You've framed it as a race car brain with bicycle brakes, so you've detoxified it. You've taken the bad rep and the stigma out of the process, so you get enthusiasm from your 8-year-old, that he wants to be a champion. He wants to strengthen his brakes so he can win races. That's really important. to get him enthusiastic about whatever is coming next, and really do that groundwork, lay that foundation, the race car brain with the bicycle brakes. And if you strengthen your brakes, son, you're going to be a champion. And so get rid of the shame, get rid of the stigma, make sure he understands that he's a champion in the making. And then if for whatever reason you don't want to use medication, then put together this package of regular physical exercise, meditation, and yes, children can learn to meditate, cerebellar stimulation exercises that stimulate the cerebellum, anything that challenges balance and coordination, standing on one leg with your eyes closed, sitting on an exercise ball with your feet off the floor, standing on a wobble board. The cerebellum is richly connected to the frontal lobes, and by stimulating the cerebellum, you can get improvement in ADHD and dyslexia as well, for that matter. It can really help with eye tracking. Then coaching, somebody other than mom to help him get organized, or if you don't want to bring in a coach, then mom, you are the de facto coach, but you want to do it in such a way that it doesn't devolve into nagging and a power struggle. The thing to watch out for is the power struggle, because it takes on a life of its own. And oddly enough, these kids would rather fight and argue than do whatever it is, the thing that they're being expected to do. Why? Because it's more engaging. It's more exciting to have a fight with mom, and even better if you can get dad involved and get mom and dad fighting. And then it's like going to the movies. You've got this big drama going on. So you want to watch out for the big struggle. But if you can set up a routine and structure, coaching, and target the typical difficult spots, getting dressed in the morning, getting out the door, getting homework done, all of those, and try to use as much structure as you can to have them happen routinely without a hiccup. Coaching can help a great deal. And then the obvious others: get enough sleep. Not always so easy. Eat properly, stick with whole foods, avoid sugar. That's the outline of a solid non-medication treatment, beginning with education, and then you add in those other elements. Before I go to the expense and time of neurofeedback, biofeedback, I would do these first and foremost. Okay, Gabriella, you referenced a website where you can play biofeedback games, as well as a couple of articles talking about activating peak brain performance. Beware of that. This is very seductive. The notion that it's like going to the gym playing these games. It doesn't pan out. What you do is you get very good at playing the game, but it doesn't translate. It doesn't transpose into other situations like homework or taking an exam or that kind of thing. So I don't think those websites are where you want to be spending your time or your child's time. If you are afraid of medication, try the program that I outlined. And then talk to your doctor about medication, because usually people don't want to use medication out of, lack of information or wrong information or both. Because the medical facts are very reassuring, and a trial of medication is just that. It's a trial. It doesn't have to last longer than a day. And when the meds work, they're a godsend. They work really, really well. You just want to make sure you're in the hands of a doctor who knows what he or she is doing to avoid side effects, to find the right dose of the right medication. So don't cross medication off the list until you at least know the facts. All right, Gabriella, I hope this answers your question. It's an important question. It's one that a lot of people have on their minds. Gabriella, thank you. Thank you. All right, well, that's it for this episode. Please keep sending me your questions, and I promise I will keep responding to as many as we possibly can. And we mean that. We thrive on your questions. Send them to connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. I'm Dr. Ned Hallowell. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Distraction. Distraction is a project of Sounds Great Media. The podcast is edited by the brilliant Pat Keogh and produced by the equally brilliant and also beautiful Sarah Guertin. The episode of Distraction you just heard was sponsored by Omega Bright CBD, formulated by Omega Bright Wellness, creators of the #1 omega-3 supplements for the past 20 years. Omega Bright CBD, safe, third-party tested, and it works. Shop online at omegabrightwellness.com.